morning, it's a new week, and welcome to the beginning of a 5-day package of current and relevant business conversations. And that's packaged into Business Morning here on Channels Television. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Let's start with happenings in the oil space. Prices slipped today, along with stock markets in Asia, sparked by weak China data and fears that a global recession could dampen oil demand, with investors eye European Union talks on a Russian oil embargo that could tighten global supplies. Brent crude lost 41 cents to $111.98 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $109.24 a barrel. That was down 53 cents. Crude imports by China, which is the world's top oil importer, rose nearly 7% in April from a year earlier, although imports for the first 4 months fell 4.8% on year. Saudi Arabia, which is the world's top oil exporter, lowered crude prices for Asia and Europe for the month of June. Last week, the European Commission proposed a phased embargo on Russian oil as part of its toughest yet package of sanctions over the conflict in Ukraine, and that boosted Brent and WTI prices for the second straight week. However, the proposal requires a unanimous vote among EU members. EU proposal was followed by a pledge by the G7 nations to ban or phase out Russian oil imports. And Washington also imposed a new sanction against Gazprom Bank executives and other businesses. And back here in Nigeria, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited has reacted to the fuel queues in parts of Abuja. The NNPC notes that this is very likely due to low loadouts at depots, which usually happen during long public holidays, in this case, the Salah celebrations. And they said another contributing factor to the sudden appearances of queues, according to the company, is the increased fuel purchases, which is also usual with returning residents of the FCT from the public holidays. NNPC Limited promises that it is working with the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority and have taken necessary steps to ramp up loadout from all depots. They assure all residents of the FCT and indeed all Nigerians that there's ample local supplies and national stock in excess of 2.5 billion liters, and this will be sufficient for 43 days. And still within that space now, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, the NUPRC, has been speaking on the issue of oil theft in the industry. The Chief Executive Officer of the Commission, Mr. Gbenga Komolafe, says that there are initiatives to curb the menace in the industry.
The Commission has commenced full-scale audit of crude oil theft and assessment of upstream assets integrity or audit to establish actual crude oil theft figures in the upstream petroleum industry. This is in view of recent controversial figures on theft volumes thrown up by some industry operators, which as a commission we believe impacts negatively on the Federation crude revenue. This is very important as the nation derives its royalty from net crude earnings. Also, the Commission is embarking on implementation of advanced cargo declaration regime. The Commission obtained necessary approvals to implement advanced cargo declaration regime in the upstream petroleum operations to curtail export of stolen crude by ensuring that crude oil and gas cargoes exported from Nigeria will have a unique identifier that confirms all documentation as regards the exported consignment. This implies that any cargo that does not have the unique identifier will be deemed not legitimately exported from the country.
Well, let's follow up on that conversation now. The issue of oil theft and initiative by the NUPRC to solve that problem. We have joining us now Mr. Temitope Kolade. He is a senior manager at Anderson. Because we do know that according to the reports released by the NUPRC, that there has been crude oil production has declined by 1.9% month on month and 1.49 megapacks per day in March from February. Well, we have Mr. Kolade now. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and helping us to understand, especially some of the proposed initiatives by the NUPRC. But unfortunately, it seems like Nigeria is still uncertain about the figures, the data when it comes to consumption or the volume that is involved in production or theft. And this is a long-standing conversation even before now, Mr. Kolade.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. It's unfortunate that we would have someone think that we don't have the figures. I think that the numbers should be very clear to several agencies of the government who are tracking this. For a couple of years, we have NEITI, that's the Nigerian Extractive Initiative for Transparency, has been tracking what happens within that space as well. And they give us figures year on year. To say that we don't have a figure, I don't think that that's a way to go. I think it's a case of what do we need to do to deal with the issues. The issue has been with us for quite a while. And whether we even have the figures or not, we need to tackle the issues because we know regardless that oil theft is an issue that continues to bedevil us as a nation.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's not a very palatable picture painted out there that we do not even know, the exact volume of our production or, the figures involved in theft. From your perspective, what are the agencies missing out for us to get the exact figures involved? At least once we know, it might be easier to deal with the issue.
Okay, for me, the number one agency is the NUPRC. Before now, it would be the DPR, very important. The other would be the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative that I mentioned earlier, and they're tracking that year on year. They have the figures. They have their own figures. Whether it's reliable or not is what we don't know. There are other agencies, security agencies, as well as the customs that also deal with the exports of whatever raw material or crude that we're taken out of Nigeria. They're also involved. So when you look at it from an holistic point of view, you will realize that it's the complicity of various agencies and individuals and cartels with respect to oil export that has made it feel like we really don't have the figures. I know that different agencies are tracking the numbers. Whether they do not agree on what the numbers are is another issue altogether.
So I guess it is time to look inward. But, there's been this conversation of that the nationals, the people involved in the core extraction of this crude are mostly not individuals with Nigeria's good or growth at heart, or most of them are not even Nigerians, that they're foreign nationals, and that perhaps is why we cannot get the right figure. I don't know if you've heard of such and what you think about it.
Well, the truth is that we've got very many people involved, both nationals and non-nationals involved in crude exploration in itself. And there are various methods. You would find that it's not just the international oil companies that engage in crude exploration. We have indigenous companies as well. And we have locals. We have individuals who have some very crude method of exploring oil as well. And some of them don't even export the oil, they refine. Some people will tell you that you don't find find that people within the Niger Delta are crying out for prices or scarcity with respect to things like kerosene and diesel, because they have their local refineries, they have their artisanal refineries taking care of that. And one of the things that it's also almost very clear to people is that some of the security agencies that are supposed to protect these assets of the nation are also complicit in the thefts of crude oil, which is one of the major problems that we have. So really and truly, I think that if you think about it, it's not about whether people are nationals or not nationals. Even nationals are also thinking about the social contract, and they're saying to you that even when it's completely reported by government, maybe they don't have all that they require. And so the way to get it is to take it from the source. And so there are different angles to looking at the issues, really and truly.
Yeah, so we have the Petroleum Industry Act, which is supposed to handle some of this. Does it speak to this issue?
Well, yeah, to an extent, it does. When you look at the Petroleum Industry Act 2021, one of the things it tries to do is that it helps to bring up an host community arrangement to ensure that people within that environment are able to cater to whatever assets that are within their purview, and such that they also own it in a way. And one of the things you'll find that vandalism is also frowned at based on that act. Now, what you see with that act against vandalism is that when you then find that people within a community are involved in vandalism, which is more like the talk of community policing that we're talking about, when people within that area are able to take some sort of interest in protecting the assets, it helps to protect the assets better. And if they are involved in vandalism in any way, it changes whatever they are able to take from the host community fund that is being provided for by the companies who are involved. And as such, it dampens the sort of development that we should see in that area. So what that should do is that it helps for some sort of transparency. It helps for the people who are within the community to see the assets are theirs as well, and they're able to protect it such that there is more transparency. And of course, they are more involved in ensuring that this national assets is not just taken for granted by some mischief makers.
And then on the other hand, there's a talk of employing more technology or technology to solving the problem. Has that been explored from your perspective?
I don't think it's been explored. If at all, it's not been taken to the scale where we see it doing a lot. Again, what you find with technology is that even when you have technology, the way the computer experts would say that it's GIGO, is garbage in, garbage out, right? You find that you also need humans to man those technology, and whatever report they give or they decide to turn off their searchlights on would also not be captured, right? So more than technology is the willpower to deal with the issues. When we have the willpower to deal with the issues as a country, I think that technology is out there to deal with the issues and to help us track the issues and report it and deal decisively with the people who are involved. Again, sometimes it's about the caliber of people who are involved in this theft, which is actually the major bane of the issue. Once we have the willpower to deal with them, technology would be one of the tools that would help to deal with it decisively.
Yeah, sounds worrying if you say technology has not been employed, and the issue of the willpower, because that's actually where it starts from. Else, solution might just be staring us in the face and we would refuse to embrace it. Now, this drop in crude oil production, this I think this is the second month we're recording a drop in our production. Does it have anything to do with more people, more nations embracing cleaner energy? Does it have any connection?
No, not at all, in my view. What you find is that sometimes recently, OPEC also actually revised our quota upwards, Unfortunately, we are unable to meet, we've been unable to meet the quota for quite a while. So it's really not about people embracing, clean energy. We have the quota to meet. We have more people to supply crude. Unfortunately, theft is one major problem that investors are complaining about, because a great percentage of what they actually produce doesn't get exported, doesn't get to the hand of the suppliers. It starts from the wellhead to the pipelines and to the barges that are taking them out of the country. Theft goes on from every part of the value chain, and it's worrisome. Some investors have taken to the solution of going offshore, where they find that people will not be able to access their facilities, and they have some sort of shield against this theft that we're talking about. That's what some people have done. But theft is one of the major problems that is really affecting the sort of production that we're able to report as a country. And for now, I don't think that the switch to clean energy is really a problem for production as a nation.
Yeah, okay, so apart from theft, there's also the talk on infrastructural decay. How much is that contributing to this?
Yeah, partly also a structural decay, especially when you realize that pipelines are needed to convey this crude from one point to the other, and vandalism is one thing that has contributed to the quick decay of those infrastructures. So apparently you can't talk about the theft without talking about the decay in the infrastructure that has been contributed to by definitely the vandalism that you see people engage in, and the sort of sabotage that you see people also engaging with those infrastructures that are in place. So really and truly, I would agree with you that, of course, the infrastructure is also part of it. And the fact that, of course, over time, we see that some of this infrastructure also needs some sort of rework, some maintenance, and not so much is being done in that regard as well.
All right. Does this drop in production and not being able, does it reduce under recovery costs?
Yes, it definitely increases our costs, right? When you look at the cost of production, at some point, NNPC had said that what they wanted to do was to ensure that producers, upstream companies have like a sub $10 production cost. But what you find really is that the cost of production per barrel is actually skyrocketing. And one of the things that adds to this is this theft, the cost of maintenance when those assets are vandalized. And so you find that we just continue to have so much of cost going up there. And when you then look at how much we can recover as a country as well, it's difficult for us to recover because we've got a lot going out. We've got a lot being lost into inefficiencies and into all sorts of sabotage here and there.
All right, Temitope Kolade, just hold your thoughts. We need to go on a short break now. When we come back, we need to follow up on that line of thought that you started there, how it's affecting revenue and how it will affect Nigerians as individuals. But that'll be after the break. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning on Channels Television. Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning, and we'll still have with us Senior Manager at Anderson, Temitope Kolade, speaking to the issue of crude oil theft, which the NUPRC raised over the weekend. Good to still have you there. Thank you so much for still staying on, Mr. Kolade. Well, obviously, this is going to affect revenue. We're talking of FAC. We're talking of, payment of salaries. We are talking of issue of servicing debt. So this will have a holistic and even an individual impact on Nigerians.
Definitely correct. From the angle of the NNPC, when you look at it from the fact that NNPC is in joint venture with a number of stakeholders and operators within the oil and gas industry, it means that every theft in those joint ventures also affect what NNPC should be reporting. The other side to that conversation is that the NUPRC is supposed to collect royalty. Royalty is not collectible on oil that is stolen, right? There is also petroleum profit tax that should be paid on oil. When it's stolen, it's not reported, and so revenue is lost. It has a great deal of impact on revenue assurance. The other part with the under recovery is that when you then look at the actual cost of petrol that we have and how much the landing cost is, and the fact that you're subsidizing at the moment, and whatever gains you have from whatever oil revenue is what it should use to deal with the deficit. It just increases the deficits here and there. And just like you mentioned, salaries and very many other things, debts that we need to finance and all of that are impacted by the growing revenue deficits that we report.
And it does not in any way reduce the subsidy because, I mean, just as I read earlier, the price, the global price of oil, Brent and oil, is increasing. And that means that the subsidy that Nigeria is paying is also increasing.
Correct, very correct. So it's an unfortunate situation we find ourselves, and one can only hope that going forward we find government exercising so much powers to ensure that the stakeholders are brought on a round table and conversations are held to ensure that we deal decisively with this issue. It's something that has been with us for quite a long time. Unfortunately, what has happened is that it continues to grow because we didn't deal with it sufficiently enough. At first, we were talking about just the locals causing these issues, but now you find that a lot of complicity involved, and very many people who are so-called elites are even suspected to be involved in the case, and it's because it wasn't dealt with or it wasn't nipped in the bud. And again, I don't think it's something that is out of place to deal with at the moment. It's something that if you take a decision that we want to really deal with it and we know how bad it's growing, we're going to find a solution to it as a nation.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, it most likely would start with the willpower to do that, because this also connects to the issue of debt servicing, which affects funds available for infrastructural development, which of course now fits into the GDP, because, I mean, no infrastructure, then it becomes more difficult to carry out businesses, and connects us to the non-oil sector, which we've been talking about diversification like forever. I don't know if are we getting results?
We're getting results in trickles, in my view. We can make it grow faster. Again, when you find that what accounts for foreign exchange largely is still oil, that's why the CBN has come up with policies to ensure that we deal with how much of outflows of forex that we have, to ensure that, again, with time we see so much how we can actually grow our forex. Largely what accounts for it remains oil, and this oil is the same thing we're saying. We can't even report 100% as going through the right channel out of Nigeria, and we have the right compensation for it. So just like you mentioned, it's something that needs to be dealt with comprehensively. When we have all the funds coming back, definitely we can focus more on the non-oil sector and see how much you're able to push the development in that regard. If you ask the Federal Inland Revenue Service, for instance, they will tell you that they've done a lot with collecting more taxes from the non-oil sector, but are we doing as much as we should or as we possibly have the potential to do? I would say no, we can do a lot better. And again, if we have all the revenue from the oil sector and we're able to deploy them rightly into the non-oil, we'll see a lot of development, and soon we'll be able to achieve that diversification that we've been talking about for quite a while.
Yeah, when you say efforts or attention should be moved to the non-oil sector, I mean, we've had a lot of policies. We even have the CBN having the, the RT200 to encourage manufacturers and all that. So what else should we be doing? We've been talking about this, and we have a lot of efforts towards this diversification plan.
Yeah, so the policies of the CBN for me appear to be policies that will deal with the issue on the surface, right? There are more, there are deeper issues that we need to deal with, and is the issue of our economy. What exactly, how productive are we as an economy, right? We have not been as productive as we really should be. You would find that power, for instance, is one major issue that we have, that even when you talk about small businesses contributing to production as a nation, our GDP as a nation, we are not seeing so much of that because much is spent on polluting energy, right? People use diesel to power their products. Sometimes there are shut-ins, there are shutdowns in their operation. And so we would also find that some other times you look at transportation, it's not also working. People spend a lot of commuting time and they're not able to put those times into some productive use that should have given us some returns, some better returns in terms of our production, our gross national production, for instance. So really, I think that there are critical sectors that we need to deal with. For me, the power sector is one serious area. The other one is the security issue that we need to deal with. Currently, you find that, just like I mentioned earlier, even people operating, investors within the oil and gas sector are thinking of going to the offshore. And why are they thinking about that? Because they are not seeing as much production when they stay onshore, because they are more prone to vandalism, they are more prone to attacks, they're more prone to theft and all of that. So security is one major issue. Farmers cannot go to farm. So it's a big issue bedeviling us that we need to deal with on a general scale. If you deal with the security issue, definitely we would have more production, we have better production, and we have more revenue as a country. If you deal with the issues of ensuring that technology is even, we have broadband technology and people don't have to commute necessarily to do their work, you have people producing more in terms of the hours that they put into work. And of course, the issue of power is something that needs to be dealt with. So again, CBN can do all it can with respect to managing the flow of funds, but more importantly is that we need to deal with the basic and fundamental economic issues to have our economy going in the right direction and giving us the sort of production that we need.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Quite a whole load there that you gave us. ICT, security, power. I mean, those actually stand out. And unfortunately, these are the realities of our times, or of the non-oil sector at this time in Nigeria. We have to thank you so much, Mr. We have to thank you so much, Temitope Kolade, Senior Manager at Anderson. Thank you for sharing your morning and your time with us this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you too. Thanks, Ine, for having me.
So after an initial plan by airline operators to hold a 2-day warning strike today and tomorrow, the group seems to have acceded to the appeals from the federal government to withdraw plans to suspend operations over high cost of jet fuel and other operational costs. While they have agreed to suspend it, unfortunately, the challenges still remain with us here in Nigeria. Let's see them outline some of the challenges that they are facing, and that prompted that attempt to go on a warning strike.
Monday, the 9th of May, may be the first of its kind, and it's looking like a tough day for the aviation sector in Nigeria, as airline operators have threatened to shut operations over the perennial increase in the cost of aviation fuel, which has hit 700 naira per litre. Aviation union representatives at this briefing appear to be in support.
Our unions stand with the airline operators of Nigeria, and we call on the federal government to put their acts together quickly enough to save our industry. it's important to stress that the backbone of aviation anywhere in the world are the airlines.
Before now, the airline operators had listed the issues of high cost of foreign exchange, as well as its non-availability, custom processes for imported spare parts, lack of parking facilities for aircraft, bird strike, and multiple entries for foreign carriers as part of their challenges.
Everything we need as airlines to operate safely come from abroad. We must procure this dollar under the weight of forex challenges. And unless something is done as quickly as possible, airlines might be forced to close shop.
While Ibom Air has announced that it will not shut operations owing to its obligations to its suppliers, financiers and staff, aviation unions are adamant on a 2-day warning strike on the 9th and 10th of May to drive home the need for implementation of new conditions of service. If the warning strike goes through, there will be no air traffic control services, ramp checks will be non-existent, and weather information may not be available.
A warning sign as against an indefinite strike so that it can be attended to. So if after 1 week of the call-off of the warning strike, we do not hear anything from the quarters that can address and resolve these problems, then we will have no choice than to go for an indefinite strike action.
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Aviation, in a press statement, sympathizes with airline operators, but appeals to them to consider the multiplier effect of shutting operations on Nigerian and global travelers.
Well, that's another hot issue going on in the business scene. Thankfully, the airline operators have agreed to suspend or at least halt on that plan to go on a strike. It would have been very devastating for the business environment of the country. And we do hope that that problem is solved, because obviously having jet fuel go from about 100 plus dollars naira per liter to 700 naira obviously does increase operational costs, as we have been discussing here with other sectors too. I mean, even Channels Television is running business here, so overhead costs has been very high up there, and businesses have been reacting to it, just like the airlines there. And just before we go on with the program, there's a breaking story here. The Academic Staff Union of Universities has rolled over its ongoing strike for another 12 weeks, effective about 12 a.m. today, the 9th of May. A statement signed by ASU President Professor Emmanuel Sodeke says that this was to give the government enough time to satisfactorily resolve all the outstanding issues. ASU says it took this decision after its National Executive Council meeting at the National Secretariat at the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, that is ASU, has rolled over its ongoing strike for another 12 weeks, effective midnight today. A statement was signed by the president of ASU, and they said that this is to give the government enough time to resolve all the outstanding issues, and they took the decision at a meeting, executive meeting today at the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. We'll certainly give you details of the decision and reactions to that here on Channels Television. This is where you should be, where I give you all the breaking news. Well, continuing with the program now, we head to the market. Today is Monday. We head to the money market first, and we see that overnight rate ended the week lower as it crashed by 7.58 points week on week to 4.9%. The contraction was supported led by the inflows from FAC allocation, so most securities, which subdued overflows for CBN Weekly, OMO, and FX. Next week, a projection is that the overnight rate will trend upwards as $40 billion is expected from OMO maturities may not be sufficient to offset the outflows. We've been talking about this for a while now with our analysts, the fact that liquidity in the market doesn't seem to be sufficient. And then moving to the Treasury bills now, it was envisaged that activities in the Treasury bills would be bullish, and it did come out bullish at the end of the week, and the buoyant system liquidity drove demand for the bills, and average yield across instruments contracted by 3 basis points to 3.8. And from there we move to the bonds market now, seeing how last week was in the bonds market. We saw that trading in the bonds secondary market was broadly bearish, and that's the flip of what happened in the Treasury. This is supposed to be reflective of expectations regarding higher yields in the near terms. There are just 3 deals from Friday, so it was broadly bearish. The week ended last week. So we can move over to the equities now and see how the week, I mean, last week was a good one for the equities, green all through, very different from what happened in the global space. Global stock market dipped, I think, about 21% year-on-year to date, but for Nigeria's equities, it was up 19% year-on-year, and we had the market hitting new highs last week. Quite an impressive outing the equities had, and it's expected that it might start to, slow down a bit because the earnings season is drawing close to a close, and that, of course, might affect the reaction and actions of investors. Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we do have more markets for you. That's what we do here on Business Morning. Do join us after the break. You're welcome back with us, because just before we go to London, I would like to remind you again that breaking news: the Academic Staff Union of Universities has rolled over its ongoing strike for another 12 weeks, and that's effective midnight today. A statement signed by the president of ASU, Professor Emmanuel Sodeke, says that this was to give the government enough time to satisfactorily resolve all the outstanding issues. ASU says it took this decision after its National Executive Council meeting at its national secretariat in the Federal Capital Territory. So ASU has rolled over a strike for another 12 weeks, effective midnight today. So let's go to London now. We have Juliana joining us. Juliana, good morning. Well, it doesn't seem like there's an end to the sanctions awaiting Russia. UK now expanding its import sanctions against the country and Belarus.
Yeah, good morning, Innie. That's right. These new fresh sanctions announced by the UK, not just a UK-wide sanctions. It's part of a Western coalition of sanctions that were announced yesterday during G7 gathering, a virtual gathering of the rich clubs across the world, including America, Japan, France, Germany, and others. And this is in an effort, I think, to try and thwart some of the big celebrations that are currently taking place in Russia, because today is Victory Day in Russia. So there are huge events taking place across Moscow and St. Petersburg and in other nations. And we have actually been listening to some of the words from Vladimir Putin's key speech, and where he is saying that Russia is under attack by the West. This weekend, well, last weekend, also signified the end of World War II. So I think lots of these sanctions that have been announced over the weekend are to ensure that Russia's war machine is crippled by these economic sanctions. So these are the third set of sanctions announced by the UK, by the Trade Minister Anne-Marie Trevelyan, and the Chancellor Chancellor Rishi Sunak. It is going to target £1.7 billion worth of trade between the United Kingdom and Russia. Anything that's imported into the UK from Russia will now have a further 35% tariff. I believe there was already about a 35% tariff, so that brings it up to about 70%. In fact, I did read one headline that's saying that some items coming in to the UK that British businesses can't do without are now subject to 90% worth of tariffs, which is an absolutely eye-watering number, especially if you look back before the war. Some of these tariffs were at zero. Also, as well, there is going to be a ban on some exports from the UK into Russia that the Russia heavily depend upon. And again, this is, I think, been announced to kind of overshadow Russia's Victory Day. Really colourful pictures that we've been getting out of the Kremlin showing Russia's arsenal of weaponry and the fact that they feel that they are fighting for survival. So that's a pretty interesting story there that I'm sure is going to develop throughout the day. I know a lot of government ministers are watching to hear exactly what Putin is going to say to his citizens, because we know from the reports that we've been hearing over the couple of days that one of the words that are banned on Russian state media at the moment is anything to do with war. Apparently, the illegal invasion of Ukraine is being described as some sort of saviour for the people in the Donbass region. So yes. Lots of people are listening very closely to what Vladimir Putin has to say.
Yeah, true, Juliana. And you know, that speech by President Putin also puts to rest there were the talks around his health, like he wasn't feeling well and all. I think that also deals with that. But it's also been interesting to know how the citizens there are reacting to this hike in the tariff, and some of the goods, the products from Russia that they used to enjoy may not be available again. What has been the reaction from that end?
Well, I'm not certain what Russian people on the ground have been thinking, because unfortunately there does appear to be some sort of, you know, a whitewashing of the media. So it's really difficult, particularly if you're in Britain, and we know that Britain is leading the Western alliance in trying to combat Putin. It's very, very difficult to try and ascertain exactly what is happening on the ground in St. Petersburg, obviously in Moscow and around Russia. We know that so many international journalists have been banned because, again, it is absolutely illegal for anybody on the ground in Russia to describe this illegal invasion of Ukraine as a war. And if you are a fledgling journalist, it's going to be very difficult to try and correspond from Russia without using the word war. So it is really difficult to get information off the ground. I do remember a couple of weeks ago, in the early stages of the war, we did manage to, via Channels Business Global, speak to a Russian professional on the ground who described her situation as very much depressing. Really difficult to get medicines, very, very difficult to engage with your international colleagues. We know that several clothing brands, food brands, luxury goods firms have all pulled out of Russia, and people still need to eat. People still need to access the internet, and people still need to use their money. But then there is a flip side to that narrative, Inni, and I think the flip side of that narrative is there is life outside of the West. There are ways to access money without visa. You are able to watch television without watching Netflix. You are able to eat without eating McDonald's.
And you're able to use the VPN.
There are people who are...
You're able to use the VPN too for the social media.
Yes, although I've never used that, I know a lot of my Nigerian friends have spoken about that before. So yes, so there is another side to the narrative, that there is life outside the West, but one can only imagine how incredibly difficult it is for ordinary Russians who are caught up in this situation.
Yeah, all right, Juliana. Well, later on, we're supposed to talk about, you know, the movement of people off the legacy benefits, which begins today. But Ladi will take that up with you at 1:30, so we'll talk to you then.
Thank you.
So it's off to the markets now. We have Laddie standing by, and before the show, Laddie told me he's seeing the level of red he has not seen
in a while.
In a long time.
It's the crypto carnage right now. It's a bloodbath. Extreme fear at 11 points. Not seen that level in a very long time. Maybe sometime last year, but now this is what we're seeing in the sentiment in the crypto market right now. It is extreme fear at 11 points, almost getting to about 10 points. Maybe we might see 5 the way it's going. And the worry,
really scary.
The worry there is, some traders now wouldn't want to, be in this market right now. Some will want to sell off, run out, and but some might say
when you sell off at this point, you're losing.
Yeah, you're losing. You only lose when you sell. But when you're a trader with emotions and you see this kind of carnage, you want to run out of the market. And some people say buy when the market is fearful, sell when the market is greedy, but you don't want to catch a falling knife, at this point.
So you don't know if from 11 is going to get to 5.
You don't know if it's going to get to 5.
And then it's going to get to 1.
You don't know if it gets to 0. It's an incredible time right now in this market. Look at the market cap there, $1.53 trillion. It's down 3.48%. Volume traded, $97.91 billion. That's the total crypto space. That's Bitcoin plus the altcoins. We're seeing sell-offs this morning, up 1.33%. Bitcoin dominance, 41.56%. We see Bitcoin there lost that 35K support that's been holding for a while. It's at 33,000, and now we see the bears aiming for that 32,000 range. Maybe it might even get to the 20s the way it's going. The sell pressure is heavy this morning. It's down 3.06%. Volume traded $37.08 billion, and we see price of Ethereum lost that 2,500 range, down 3.35%. Volume traded $20.76 billion, and we see it's all red on the top alts by market cap. It's a bloodbath right there. Let's bring in Olumide Additional now, financial market analyst. Hello, Olumide. Good morning.
Yeah, hello, Laddie. This is a crypto Armageddon going in play right now.
Yes, like you can't find the right words for this. It's really scary, Olumide. And some are afraid this might actually go to 0. We're seeing traders afraid right now. Crypto Twitter is agog with emotional traders right now, Olumide. What are we seeing here?
Yeah, good question. But I think we need to understand the fact that the US dollar is riding on 2-decade high. Growing concerns that the US Fed is becoming very hawkish. And the fact that they've not even started to reduce their balance sheet. Coming June, about $95 billion will be taken up from the market every month till the next 10 months. So we're talking about $1 trillion, and that's really keeping a lot of investors shaky. And that's why we saw Bitcoin breaking below $35,000. And you see that level becomes very tricky because having not been able to retrace above $38,000, it means that the next support level is at $38,000. But I think the parabolic effects of the sell-offs in the market should not be exaggerated because what is really happening is that we are seeing so many assets across the board being liquidated, from the bond to the stock. So definitely the crypto market is included because of the kind of correlation. So that VIX, the index that judges the amount of fear in the market, is so high. So right now, I think it's safe to say that, yeah, the sell-off is really going big. But, moving on, I think it's unlikely for Bitcoin to get to the 0 mark, very unlikely. There are so many fundamentals you need to consider. That adoption is really has increased. The ecosystem is big. But the only challenge we have is that liquidity seems to be tightening, and the fact that we've not seen the crypto regulation that Joe Biden really initiated coming to play really keeps some investors wanting to play safe. So we are seeing conservative investors staying out of the line.
Quite interesting. I was seeing, Warren Buffett make comments about the market, talking about how Bitcoin is rat poison and how he's not going to buy all of the Bitcoin in the world for $25. Do you think that's having an impact on the market?
Yeah, Warren Buffett, you can't take Warren Buffett's words lightly. He has his say in the investment world. And, this is really the big narrative that is playing among conservative investors, including Bill Gates, including certain powerful hedge fund managers. So they see the crypto market as just a speculative asset with little utility use. and you need to respect their view because of the fact that we have so many questionable entities around the crypto market. But you see, the good thing about technology is that as technology evolves, the weaker ones stay off and the good ones stay on. So despite their concerns, we're seeing certain credible entities just like BlackRock, the biggest asset manager in the world that has about $9 trillion asset, adopting Bitcoin. We see other assets also coming to play along all these blue chip banks. So it's very tricky for us to discard the crypto market right now.
Right. Well, Olumide, maybe it's a sell in May and go away a situation happening right now. But we know April was bad for the markets, and now we're seeing, May already show bad signs. But Olumide, thank you so much. We'll see how it plays out for the week. All right, so it's a bloodbath, but we have some tokens actually making profit this morning. We have Near Protocol there, it's up 9.06%. Tron also up 3.52%, but it's quite lean if you know the crypto space. The top gainers are normally double digits, but we're seeing single digits gains this morning. Flip over to the top losers. We see Carver there leading that count is down 10%. And Shiba Inu token, that's one of your favorites there, Ini. It's down about 8.12%. It's a bloodbath in this market right now. We see Rune there.
Don't worry, Laddie. Don't worry,
it's all red,
Laddie.
Ini, and I am alarmed.
It's a pullback for a comeback, so don't worry about it.
All right, I guess Ini's comforting me at this point, but it's fine.
All right, Laddie, thank you so much. But we'd like to remind you, viewers, that Channels Television does not advertise or trade or transact in cryptocurrency or any other investments. We are a media house. We report the markets, we report the news, and we do not get involved in all of those things. So anyone you see claiming to be Channels Television is obviously a fake. We'd like to let that out there. Well, that's it on the program today. Do remember, 1:30, Business Incorporated will be back. And that conversation we didn't have with Juliana, you can get it at 1:30, and a whole lot more, especially stories from the African continent. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm Ini John Mekwa.